I'm sure you've already realized that finding a job as a non-native speaker of English can be pretty tough, especially in the private sector where so many job ads are for native speakers only. Maybe when you go on forums or Facebook groups for non-native speaker teachers, you hear a lot of people complaining about the job ads, discriminatory job ads, exchanging views about how bad the situation is in certain countries. And there's definitely a lot of truth in it. But I thought that out of all this negativity out there, I'll also make a couple of more positive videos and go over different places in the world where I think it's really good to teach if you're a non-native speaker of English. So let's get right down to it. If you're new here, then click on the button right below this video, follow me so you don't miss any future videos. And you can also check out my online courses that I run on TEFLequityadvocates.com. The link is right below this video. In this particular video, I want to talk about teaching English in Belgium, and more specifically teaching English in Flanders. Just a very quick geography lesson here. If you're not familiar, I wasn't familiar with geography of Belgium before I arrived here, but there are two parts. There is Flanders, where they speak Dutch or Flemish, and that's closer to the border with the Netherlands. And then there's Wallonia, where they speak French, and it's closer to the border with France. There's also a small part where they speak German. And things are quite different in different regions of Belgium, so I'll mostly focus here on Flanders, where I've been teaching English for the last 4 years, mostly in universities. And I personally think Flanders is a fantastic place to teach English if you're a non-native speaker. The first reason for that is that practically there are no job ads out there for native speakers only. This idea that native speakers are somehow better teachers almost doesn't exist. I literally in the last 4 years, I've almost haven't come across this idea here in Flanders. It's quite different in Brussels, even though it's very close to where I live. There you might find quite a few job ads for native speakers only. But in Flanders, this native speakerist idea doesn't really exist. The second reason why I like it here so much is that because of the professionalism of the local English teaching industry. Local teachers are very highly qualified, they're also very proficient. This means that there are hardly any unqualified or barely qualified native speakers getting jobs left and right. If you want a job, you need very high qualifications, probably a master's degree. And you also need to be highly proficient in English. And I think this just creates this feeling of professionalism in the industry, which I really personally like. And people who teach English here teach English because they are qualified to do so. It's their job. They're not doing it for one gap year to travel the world. The third reason why I think it's really good here in Flanders as well is because of the salaries. Admittedly, I'm talking about my experience in local universities, right? So I can't speak for all the different contexts in which you could teach in Flanders. But in my experience, the salaries are really, really high, especially compared to the times where I was teaching in language schools in other countries in Europe. So it's definitely a really good place to be. The third reason are the working conditions. Again, in here, I'm talking about my experience in the universities here. But in my previous job for KU Leuven, the Katholieke Universiteit in Leuven, I was practically free all summer and still getting paid. I taught 16 hours a week. That's 16, not 60. 16 hours a week. In some universities, where I work now, for example, you do 20 hours. But forget about doing 30 hours a week. Forget about running around like a headless chicken in between your different classes. Forget about teaching split shifts starting at 7 a.m. and finishing at 9 p.m. in the evening. That's not going to happen here, right? So, and I think this is really, really good. The unions are pretty strong as well. So you get a lot of protection as a teacher if things go the wrong way. So there are quite a few advantages of teaching English in Flanders. You don't get much of an issue with native speakerism. Job ads for native speakers only practically don't exist here in Flanders. The salaries are really high and the working conditions are really, really good as well. There are some downsides that you need to know about. Well, first of all, language schools, your traditional academies, language schools, private institutes practically don't exist in Flanders. The reason might be that people learn such good English in public schools that they simply don't need a language school. But it's quite shocking when you arrive here. I mean, in comparison to my native country, Poland, or for example, Spain, where I taught as well, where you have language schools on every street corner. In here, in a city of, say, 300,000 people, you might have 1 or 2 language schools, and they'll probably be pretty small. And most people learning English there will be foreigners. You will get very few Belgian people, Flemish people actually learning English in those institutions. So few language schools, which means that you're going to need higher qualifications to find jobs in universities, for example, or in public schools. And there might be fewer job opportunities because your options will be limited to those universities and public schools. Another disadvantage that you definitely need to know about is that if you're working in a university, you're most likely going to work on a temporary contract, and after you've got 5 years of experience in the university contract, the law obliges the university to give you a permanent position. However, those permanent positions are obviously very few and far between, because once people get them, they don't want to leave them. So you will very likely be made redundant after those 5 years. But 5 years is quite a lot for you to, to make a life here, enjoy it, and then see what happens after that, right? So it's not that bad at all. So in this video, I've tried to inject a little bit of positivity there into all that negativity that is definitely out there. It is difficult to find jobs as a non-native speaker, but I want to show you that there are places where you can find jobs as a non-native speaker, where working conditions are good, and that I would recommend you give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, then click on the follow button so you don't miss any future videos, and you can also check out my courses on TEFLequityadvocates.com. The link is right below this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.